For now, Hezbollah and Israel appear to have stepped back from the brink of a wider war. Still, the terror group has the ability to continue striking Israel from southern Lebanon.
Hezbollah controls the area despite the presence of the Lebanese army and UN troops. Some claim that aid from the United States to the Lebanese army may actually be supporting Hezbollah. Chuck Holson explains from northern Israel.
By supporting the Lebanese army, you are supporting, in the U.S., Hezbollah.
The United States provides approximately $300 million annually to the Lebanese army, ostensibly to help keep the peace. However, the lines between the official military and the terror group are increasingly blurred.
They are giving support to the Lebanese army, and indirectly they are supporting Hezbollah, because the Lebanese army, many of its soldiers are Hezbollah fighters. And in the south, especially here, these soldiers of Lebanese army are collaborating and coordinating with Hezbollah.
I'm standing in the town of Malkia, which is a kibbutz that's situated right on the Lebanese border. As a matter of fact, the border is just about a quarter mile behind me. And that village that you see on the hillside back there is called Bleda. It is inside Lebanon, and it's one of the places where Hezbollah is daily firing missiles and rockets and drones at Israel.
On one hand, we're holding a gun to protect ourselves. We have no interest of invading into Lebanon, to fight anyone, to kill anyone. We don't. We just do it for our own protection. I just remind you who started this war.
Since October, Hezbollah has launched over 7,000 rockets into Israel, with border communities bearing the brunt. Adding to the complexity is UNIFIL, a UN peacekeeping force, deployed since 1973 to maintain peace. Critics argue they've failed to prevent Hezbollah's growing threat.
Lebanese army is not functional. It's penetrated by Hezbollah. Its security and intelligence is penetrated by Hezbollah. And we in Israel cannot and shall not depend on any resolution that give a power to Lebanese army that is penetrated by Hezbollah and to UNIFIL that is allowing under 1701 Hezbollah to grow up to this level of monster.
UNIFIL's annual budget exceeds $800 million, with a significant portion coming from U.S. taxpayers. Despite this investment, Hezbollah's attacks continue.
You're fighting against ghosts, and especially underground ghosts. So it takes time, but we're winning. We're winning over them.
As Israel continues to defend against daily attacks, questions persist about the effectiveness of U.S. aid to Lebanon and UN peacekeeping efforts in the region. From the Lebanese border, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Well, that UN peacekeeping force is entirely ineffective. This was supposed to be a weapons-free zone, and you see thousands, tens of thousands of rockets being stored there, underground tunnels everywhere, and it boggles the mind that the UN somehow thinks it's doing its job on the ground. But here's something that ought to disturb every single American. Our taxpayer dollars are going to support the Lebanese army, and you just heard that that means you're supporting Hezbollah. Our taxpayer dollars went into Hamas and into supporting Gaza in the guise of humanitarian aid, but that aid, everyone on the ground knew Hamas was diverting it to build rockets and to build tunnels in order to attack Israel. The so-called UN Relief Works Agency, UNRWA, that has been overrun with Hamas. UNRWA employees actively participated in the October 7th attack against southern Israel. And it's been known for a long period of time that they're supporting Hamas. Under the Trump administration, the U.S. stopped all funding to UNRWA. In the very first week of the Biden administration, they restored that. Here's another one for you, the Palestinian Authority. It's our taxpayer dollars that keep that propped up. And we already know they have a set-aside martyr program where if you kill Israelis, if you're imprisoned or you commit some act of terror, you and your family are going to receive monthly wages all part of the Palestinian Authority budget. We are funding that. So our taxpayer dollars are being used in Lebanon, are being used in Gaza, are being used in the West Bank in order to promote terror, to attack Israel. It's high time we stop this and say, no, we're not supporting your ideology. And I know a lot of people say, well, what about the humanitarian issues? What about the children of Gaza? What about these things? Well, until their leadership changes and they stop the ideology of hate against Israel, we have to hold them accountable. We can't fund that. And until there is some mechanism in place on the ground to make sure humanitarian aid is actually getting to the children, well, we need to stop until we can make sure it's going where we intend it. Well, in other news, the IDF rescued a hostage in Gaza today. Gary Lane has that story and more from the CBN Newsroom. Gary?
That's right, Gordon. The IDF announcing the news this morning. Qaid Farhan El-Qadi, an Arab citizen of Israel, has been held by Hamas since October 7th. The 52-year-old father of 11 children was taken from kibbutz Magen, where he worked. Israel forces rescued him from a tunnel in Khan Yunis. It's the fourth successful rescue of a live Israeli hostage from Hamas. The task force investigating the attempted assassination of Donald Trump visited the scene of the shooting yesterday. Their mission is to learn why the Secret Service failed to protect the former president and take steps to make sure such an attack never happens again. CBN's Michelle London reports.
The official House task force, a bipartisan group appointed by House leaders to investigate the attempted assassination of former President Trump, made its first appearance touring the rally site in Butler, Pennsylvania Monday. 9 members of Congress from different sides of the aisle coming together Monday with one mission.
Getting to the truth is a slow process. And for us, none of us are looking at it as we have to get a quick answer. We're looking at we have to get the right answer.
The task force, co-chaired by Pennsylvania Rep. Mike Kelly and Colorado Rep. Jason Crow, on site at the Farm Show grounds, where former President Trump's rally took a tragic turn on July 13th. Task force members climbed the roof where gunman Thomas Crooks opened fire into the crowd.
I definitely took note today that there were a lot of lines of sight that appear to have been unsecured that day, that didn't have eyes on.
From that vantage point, Crow and other task force members felt a sobering sense of just how close the shooter was to the stage, where a bullet struck and injured the former president, and another claimed the life of rally attendee Corey Compertor. The task force was appointed a month ago by unanimous House vote. In that time, they've interviewed the FBI, local and state law enforcement, and will continue to talk with people who attended the rally.
The American people are demanding accountability for what happened. Let's be clear. That's every Secret Service agent's worst nightmare.
Secret Service failures led to Director Kimberly Cheadle's resignation and at least 5 other members placed on leave. Tim Miller, a former Secret Service agent, says more needs to be done, and many why questions need answers.
Why weren't tactical teams communicating immediately with each other? Why weren't police officers who identified the threat based on civilians seeing a guy on the roof with a rifle?
As task force members assessed the Butler grounds, some Republican members of Congress held their own forum in Washington.
The purpose of this hearing is to ensure that we have the ability to ask the questions that are necessary to get transparency.
Led by Florida Rep. And former sniper Corey Mills, the group heard from security experts at the Heritage Foundation, expressing doubts about the bipartisan task force's ability to come to a thorough conclusion due to political considerations.
If we are not selecting people based on meritocracy, that independent investigation such as this will continue to move forward.
Now, at this forum, Arizona Rep. Eli Crane said he's introducing legislation calling on Secret Service agents to surrender their records from July 14th. However, the official task force currently has the only authority in the House to issue subpoenas. Michelle London, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, Michelle. Turning to immigration and a ruling by a federal judge affecting an estimated 500,000 people. A district judge in Texas blocked a Biden administration policy making it easier for spouses of U.S. citizens to gain legal status. Republican attorneys general in 16 states challenged the program. The policy would have allowed some spouses to stay in the U.S. as they go through the process for a green card, rather than having to leave the country, in some cases for years. The judge's order blocking the policy is in effect for 2 weeks, but can be extended. Well, the old saying goes that religion and politics don't mix. That's not necessarily the case in Chicago, as thousands of people descended on the Windy City for the Democratic National Convention last week. A local ministry took the opportunity to make an impact beyond what goes beyond politics. CBN's Paul Petit explains.
We needed a leader who was steady and brought people together.
While speeches and applause took place inside Chicago's United Center, chaos often erupted outside.
Our God is an awesome God.
In the midst of it all, a group of Chicago street ministers boldly shared the gospel just outside the security perimeter.
We went on a day where there were feminists, communists.
Juan Elias Riesco leads Chicago for Jesus, a multi-denominational team supported by the city's Metro Praise International Church.
When we were there, we were communicating with the communist revolutionaries of America. And we had a great 10, 15-minute conversation. We talked about Jesus. We explained to them that the Bible is way more sufficient than, any communist manifesto. I had the privilege of ministering the gospel to a trans person. I looked at her and I said, did you know that you were fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God? That God did not design you to be trans, but he made you perfectly as you are.
Jesus Christ is the only way to truth and life.
Their encounters often impactful and occasionally shocking.
I want to kill my baby.
And see, the problem with a lot of
I want to kill my baby.
So we know things can take a turn for the worst at any time, but brother, we believe that God has called us to go to these places.
Jesus is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Chicago for Jesus remained focused in those places, even when accosted by an anti-Israel demonstrator.
So the same guy who was inflicting, persecution upon us, putting his speakers in our face, getting in our face, we found his phone and we gave it back to him. And he looked at us and said, wow, man, that really just changed my perspective on you guys. And we got to minister to him after that.
Last week, it was ministry at the DNC. This week, it could be in front of a Chicago abortion clinic or at a local music festival. Riesco says every place is fair game to do what their name demands. Reach Chicago for Jesus.
We know that the truth of the gospel is the only thing that can slice through these lies and save the souls of these people.
Paul Petit, CBN News.
Gordon, it sure is good to see the wind of the Holy Spirit moving on the Windy City.
Well, I would encourage all Christians to reread the book of Acts, because we're getting into a point in America's history where we've lost our moorings, where we no longer acknowledge the Bible and people aren't reading the Bible. But in the book of Acts, Christians encountered a culture that had no Bible at all. That was something that the Jews did in Israel, and it wasn't something they did in the cities of Greece. What did the early apostles do? Well, they went to the marketplace. They went to the streets. They boldly proclaimed. Did they go to the synagogue? Yes. Did they go to gatherings where there were people earnestly seeking after God? Yes. But they also went directly to people to proclaim the good news. I think we're getting quite near a point in American culture where have we descended into atheism, agnosticism, but also paganism. And in that, how do we proclaim that wonderful good news? That message works. It worked in Greece 2,000 years ago. It worked in Asia Minor 2,000 years ago. It will work in America today.